The Georgia Bulldogs are going to Vaught Hemway Stadium this weekend to take on the Ole Miss Rebels. The Rebels are sitting at 7-2, Bulldogs 8-1. This has huge implications on the line. Blythe, let's talk about it.
Let's get into this. First off, this is a very scary game, I think, for Georgia. This is their final road game of the season against one of the hottest teams in the country right now. So this could be a very, very dangerous test. Ole Miss just put up 63 points on Arkansas, and it doesn't look like they're going to slow down anytime soon. So Georgia's definitely going to have their hands full this weekend. Ole Miss has a very elite offense, and it's one that the Bulldogs obviously need to take note of. The Rebels are known for their run game and their high tempo approach. Ole Miss totaled 694 total yards of offense against Arkansas last week. Wideout Jordan Watkins had 5 touchdown catches, setting the school record for single game receiving touchdowns.
No, they were absolutely amazing. As we talked about in our post game episode, Jackson Dart broke the record for the school, which was set by Archie Manning. So it's been sitting there for a minute and it's been set by a Manning. And what's better than a Manning as QB? So it's pretty good. But looking at these two coaches, Kirby Smart and Lane Kiffin, they worked together. They were both
Yeah.
coordinators at the University of Alabama during 2014 and 2015. Kirby as the defensive coordinator, Lane Kiffin as that offensive coordinator. They won a national championship in 2015 running the ball with Derrick Henry, under the great Nick Saban, who's now on College Game Day. So these 2 are not strangers. They've had a long-standing relationship. They were coached under the same mentor, and have now brought up programs of their own in the SEC, which is just absolutely amazing to see. This is Ole Miss's, like, pretty much last shot at the college football playoff. A win over Georgia, I think, would get them in there as long as they win out. Well, would certainly get them in there if they win out. It might get them in there if they lose one more game, depending on how the rest of the season shakes out. Georgia, however, is looking to maintain their top playoff position. They want to secure that spot in the SEC championship game. They want to win that SEC championship game, get that bye week. If they don't win the SEC championship game, get that fifth seed in the playoffs. So this has big repercussions for both teams. And like you said, looking at how Ole Miss performed last week and then looking at how Georgia's been with Carson Beck, this one can be a little bit scary for Georgia. However, Georgia did dominate Ole Miss last year with a 52-17 win, and Ole Miss is really seeking revenge, a chance to rewrite last year's ending in a way.
Yes, I think the key question here will be, will Georgia be able to slow down this Ole Miss offense? Ole Miss quarterback Jackson Dart is coming off of a very historical night. He's notched the program's single game passing yards with 515 yards, tying the program's record for passing touchdowns in a single game with 6, and breaking the school record for total yards in a game with 562 in the win last week. Um, Dart, obviously, he's another run heavy quarterback, and this will be a threat to Georgia's defense for sure. But, also looking at Beck, he has thrown 11 interceptions this season, all within the past 5 games. Obviously, some of his interceptions weren't entirely his fault, but his decision making has been just a little shaky. So I think that's going to be a very key part of this game Saturday. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of noise, a lot of excitement, and just how will he be able to handle that? I mean, he's obviously one of the most talented players on the field, but will that decision making be smart this weekend and ultimately lead this Bulldog offense to a win?
Yeah, and looking at these two quarterbacks, Jackson Dart is about 10% more accurate than Carson Beck. He's thrown for about 1,000 more yards. And like you said, he is dynamic on his legs. And Georgia has seen that before. They saw that when they played Alabama, a team that is dynamic on their legs with Jalen Milrow. So I feel like because they, in that game, were able to adjust to it, shut him down a little bit, they have the experience there. But ESPN's Paul Feinbaum calls this the biggest game in Kiffin's career. A win here could catapult Kiffin and Ole Miss into the CFP spotlight, as we've been talking about. But Lane Kiffin has always praised Georgia. He says they're what Alabama used to be under Nick Saban, and obviously Georgia has been incredibly dominant. They've had a 49-0 record against all teams since 2021, with only 3 losses coming to Alabama. So that is the only team they've lost to since 2021. So will they be able to get this win? And stop their streak of absolutely dominating every other team that's not Alabama. I really think Kirby has an Alabama problem because he makes it work with everybody else. Kirby Smart's squad is also known for their defense, like you were talking about, that resembles an NFL team's defense, as Kiffin was saying. But they do have some key injuries on this Georgia defense, which make them slightly vulnerable. So Will Dart, who just showed out last week and has obviously been pretty consistent throughout the season, will he be able to take advantage of those injuries? Now, with Beck, if he throws 3 interceptions like he has done multiple times, I think in 2 games this season, he's thrown 3 interceptions. If he does that against Ole Miss, I don't think Georgia will win this game. Dart is too explosive. Dart can put points on the board, as we have seen, and he will take advantage of those 3 turnovers. Now, if Beck is able to um, control the momentum of the game, control the pace, keep the ball in his hands, then I think Georgia's gonna pull it out. They're just too talented. They still have, a stronger roster than Ole Miss. So, it's really gonna be interesting to see, and I really think this is on the QBs. Dart played a perfect game last week. He played a perfect game. He kept the ball in his hands at all times. He broke records. If he can do that again, even a fraction of that, I think this is gonna be a very tight race, and Georgia might get caught here.
Yeah, I think so too. I think, it's really going to be whoever gets this rhythm early. And we both know that Georgia will be able to score enough points, but it will all depend on, how many points Georgia also gives up. I think it's going to be a tight one. I do pick the Rebs this weekend. I just have that feeling. I don't know. They're due. They're due for a big win. I just think that that's the way it's gonna roll. Georgia hasn't completely, um, impressed me all the way yet still, and I know we say that every week, but they still just don't. I don't know. I don't know what it is for me, but they're just I guess that's kind of the beauty of this year with the 12-team playoff. Nobody has been perfect, and you don't have to be. Now, as we get into later weeks, yes, you will. But for now, we have seen where, none of these teams have been perfect. None of these teams have been the straight shot lead winner of the pack, number one going forward. But, right now, like I just think that Ole Miss is going to walk away with it.
No, I think they absolutely could as well. Kiffin mentioned that the Rebels were 2 plays away from being undefeated if their red zone execution improves, and it certainly did last week. So, if they can be disciplined, if they can do what we have seen them capable of doing, then I think they have every opportunity to win. However, I have never seen Lane Kiffin win in one of these big moments. He
Yeah.
hasn't done it, and until he does it, until he instills some confidence in me that he is capable of showing up in these big moments, producing and winning big, I will always pick the Georgia Bulldogs in a matchup against Kiffin. So
That's true. I think that's like the number one test too, like for real, for Ole Miss to be looked at and I think acknowledged as a program that can play at that level. It really is going to be Coach Kiffin and this team getting that big time win like this. All eyes will be on this game. So if he can get that done, then people might look at this program a little bit differently going forward.
absolutely, and I think he has every capability of doing it. I just haven't seen it, just as I haven't seen since 2001 Georgia lose to any other team that doesn't have a scripted A on on their jerseys. So I'm just sitting here like, oh, I think Georgia's gonna win, and I think Lane Kiffin's gonna lose because that's just how it's happened. It's I I don't know. I remember watching games in the past where I'm like, "Dang, Alabama could have taken Georgia down here." It was the TCU national championship game. We didn't go to that, those playoffs, and I was like, "No, the only team that can take down Georgia is Alabama." So, we're gonna see if Ole Miss can do it. It would be great to see. I'd love to see it. I'd love Kiffin to come out on top, with how he's grown this team, how he's grown the Rebels over the years, especially utilizing the transfer portal like nobody else. Dabo, take notes. Um, but I do think Georgia's gonna pull this one out.
One thing will always be true, and he will always have fire shoes. And we talked
Oh
about
yeah.
that from day one back at SEC Media Day. If you haven't watched that video yet, go back and watch it. Be sure to also like and subscribe to our page. We have so much fun breaking down these games each week, and be sure to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. We do a live show on both Instagram and TikTok weekly, so be on the lookout for that, and we appreciate all of the support.